This next question is about emerging technologies. Paul, the question asked was, what emerging or rapidly changing technology will have the most significant effect on government missions?
Well, I mean, I'll speak from our point of view, maybe from a mobility perspective. The next generation that Michael actually alluded to, long-term evolution, is probably going to have a significant impact on what you're doing. LTE is, like most promised new technologies in mobility, not going to solve all of the problems, right? But it's got a lot of promise. It's faster. It's less expensive. It covers more area. It's in a different frequency, a lower frequency, so it penetrates buildings better. But there's also a lot of work that's being done on the public safety side with long-term evolution. And I think that there are some really interesting ways that government's going to be able to use new things like that, the newest stuff, maybe leapfrog past some old ways of doing things with old, Motorola two-way radios on the public safety side, and really create much safer buildings for all of us. And then also, I think the promise of teleworking and zero emission footprints that are kind of being thrown out there. You don't really get to zero emissions if you're in a car traveling to work. It's really hard to do it. So you gotta be able to enable that rapid data transmission in wide areas, and the best way to do that really is a mobile wireless network. That's what most emerging nations have kind of turned to.
Anyone else have any comments on that? I will let you know GTRA, besides one staff member who takes the train, is a zero-emission company. We do all cloud and everyone teleworks, so it's, even in our humble little world, it is achievable. The next question is about budget. This is obviously something that comes up a lot. Dave, I'm going to ask this to you. How can companies such as yours address the likelihood of budget impacts in the federal sector?
Well, as I had stated in my opening comments, that limited budget, limited resources, limited time are the two top things that concern a lot of folks, both within the security space and also just operationally within federal agencies. So key to impacting that is to use the computer as it was designed to be used, which is to basically take manual tasks and automate them. It's fairly simple and straightforward. Yet, unfortunately, in much of the security space today, a lot of the first generation tools rely on man-in-the-loop manual processes to monitor security systems, monitor monitors. A better way to do that is to architect an environment that utilizes the speed and the capacity of the computer to automate your process. And the automation saves people resources, it saves budget resources, and most importantly in a security space, it saves time. Because if a person has to detect and respond, a person, he can't do it as fast as a computer will do it in a nanosecond time frame. So automation is key. And whatever system you select should rank it. Who automates it the most?
Anyone else have any answers on how budget challenges can be faced? I know everyone wants some answers to that one.
We met with Ed O'Hare, who's GSA FAST, and GSA kind of has two sides, and we work with both of them pretty closely. One of them is acquisitions, and then one of them is public buildings. And so we talked to him about a shared cost model that we now have on GSA schedule, which is kind of an interesting approach and very outside the box. And what it does is it allows the government to make some of the contribution, but then also some of it is shared back into the network with other users of that network, be it wireless service providers or public safety entities or others, so that it all isn't necessarily one person who has to pay for the whole of the network. But by unifying it, it still allows that centralized control.
Awesome. Last two questions are a theme that I think sometimes as technology executives, I always like to say that we sometimes get too much into the, technology is not the end, it's the means to an end, and ultimately all of us are here to deliver better services to citizens. There's a few questions that kind of come up under that theme. Paul, actually, this one for you, and I think you kind of touched on this in your earlier answer, 2 answers ago, but what opportunities for security and life safety are enabled through deploying a secured mobile network?
Okay, so some of this is probably better answered by application people, but we sort of support a network that makes it that you get coverage everywhere. And a few people who have been up in our talk have already probably seen this slide, but I show a slide of a Cook County building in Chicago where 14 people died in a stairwell because they couldn't make their phones, and just things happened. A lot of contributing factors, but you can't underestimate people's ingenuity, right? So the CTA stopped one day in Chicago, and people used their cell phones for flashlights to escape, kind of find their way. And so life safety it's really hard to understate how much more we can really do. Conveying real-time video to first responders of areas of the building, maps in real time for escape routes. I think there's a lot that can be done here. And I think there's good applications, folks who are making these applications, creating these opportunities for us to make our buildings safer. So.
All right, and last question that I had was for Chris. This is in regards to kind of Web 2.0 social networking. And the question is, in light of social networking, collaboration applications such as SharePoint, et cetera, what do you consider the most current security risks to the infrastructure today? And how are most current security capabilities able to protect, and where do they fall short? And then kind of everyone, what are the technologies available to cover those gaps?
So I think there are 2 great examples in there, and I'll highlight sort of Facebook and SharePoint as as the poster children for this. So a recent Robert Half survey, and there's been a bunch of surveys about this, suggests that 55%-ish of organizations, again, public and private sector, think they block Facebook. So I can tell you, so we do something, it's a research piece that we do about every 6 months where we look at actual enterprise traffic. And we looked at 6 months worth of traffic from 723 different organizations. And I can tell you that public and private sector, 96% of enterprises have Facebook on their networks. So aside from the delusion that some of the executives had here, one of the things that it highlights is the benefits to the organization are too strong to ignore. So whether you're talking about recruiting, public affairs, outreach, research, the benefits of things like social networks are too powerful. And I mentioned this previously. The control model that we have is wrong. We have this idea that there are threats in their business apps and there are no other kinds of traffic. And we need to create a model. And again, this is an opportunity that says, yes, there are things that are high risk, high reward, and I need to treat them as such. The other opportunity here is a lot of organizations, and I had a lot of conversations today, where there are sometimes stated policies about these applications. All too often, there aren't. Or those policies are unclear, or they're not exactly explained well to organizations, or they're not well thought out. So there are cases where I've stumbled into, they've got a policy, but it's either not communicated or not well enforced. So the point is there's 2 opportunities here. One is to evolve the control model. The second is to evolve the policy. And I want to take those 2 applications I mentioned, Facebook and SharePoint, and kind of treat them a little bit in terms of the controls that we have in place today. So if you look